You win. So, hi. I guess to start things off, introduce myself. My name is Mark Heckler. I'm a Spring developer advocate with Pivotal Software Inc. Pivotal are the makers of Spring Boot, Spring Framework, Rabbit, MQ, Redis. We stewarded for several years, got things kind of off and running. Greenplum, huge contributor to Apache Tomcat, huge contributor to Cloud Foundry. So we have our hands in a lot of open source pies. You may have noticed that consistent thread. Open source is the model of the present. In the future, there are exceptions, but they're exceptions. So that's kind of where we live. Excuse me. We like to call ourselves a tiny little startup in Silicon Valley. I actually live in the middle of the US, which is very convenient for traveling about the US. Not, somewhat less so when I travel elsewhere, but, again, is what it is. So I blog semi-regularly at thehecklers.org, and pardon me, I've got I was just telling Jason that, traveling around about a lot and trying to get over a cold for the last 2 months, every time I go to a new area with different temperatures and humidities, things just roar again. So this could be fun. But the good news is, if my voice gives out, Jason has graciously agreed to take over and finish the presentation. So I blog semi-regularly at thehecklers.org, not as often as I'd like, but I'm hoping to fix that this year. And I tweet all the time at MKHeck. So anyone here on Twitter? Okay, one. I'm just kidding. Twitter is a great tool, I think. Of all the social networks, that has the highest signal-to-noise ratio. I kind of live on Twitter from the time I get up to the time I go to bed, and sometimes lying in bed. But by all means, if you have any questions or comments or feedback, or you think of something afterward, ping me. I live there. But if you're not on Twitter, I'm also a member of the slightly older and more established social network called email. Is anyone on email? Okay, yeah, a couple more. That's cool. I have, like you, several email addresses, so I always just kind of point back to my personal one, which is mark@thehecklers.org. It's easier to remember. So if it doesn't fit into 140 characters and you want to run something by me or throw something at me, that's cool. Send me an email. Not quite as responsive on email, but I do get there eventually. So before we go any further, though, if you don't mind, I would like to get what I call a speaker selfie, because that way I can prove to my boss that I really was here and doing something, at least for the first few minutes, not just sampling the excellent craft beer scene I hear about in Oklahoma City. So this side of the room, smiles. All right, and this side. And let's see, you guys on camera? Okay, yeah, okay, got you there, Twitch. All right, yeah, all right, perfect.
You can also send your boss a link to the Twitch link. The Twitch stream, and you can watch it live right now.
What? Oh!
Yeah.
Oh, good point. Well, he's on the West Coast, so he may have a couple other things going on at the moment. But let's see. Well, although we are, wow. Let's see. What time is it? It's 12:44, right?
Yes.
Okay, everything switched. I just had me a little concerned. Once in a while, something doesn't. So okay, well, carry on. So who am I? I'm the author of several blogs and blog posts. I've contributed to, I've co-authored one book. I have another in the pipeline, and actually I have another one which looks like I'm going to get a deal for this year, which is going to really ramp up the pressure to write more, that I'm doing solo, talking about cloud backends for IoT systems, because IoT brings a lot of new, well, certainly expanded demands on cloud-based systems. So with numerous communication channels and data feeds and what have you. So excited about that. I've also contributed to several books, Text and Code, and I speak kind of wherever people will open the door for me. So I've traveled around the world speaking. Thanks for inviting me here. Jason and I have known each other for a long time. I've never gotten to see his stomping ground, so this is kind of cool. So, I would invite him to St. Louis, but then the property values would decrease, so I don't know. But, I'm a software architect and developer. I do love code, as you'll probably see pretty shortly. I feel like architects are good when they don't code, but they're not really good when they don't code. I think you really need to understand what you're implementing in order to be really solid with that. So that's kind of a personal feeling of mine. I kind of live that out. I am a Java champion, so you can probably get a pretty good clue on what I develop in, but recognized by my peers for contributions to the Java community. If you had any part in that, thank you very much. So I'm going to be drinking a lot to try to keep the throat going. Just so you know, this is water. This is just water. I have actually gone to a meetup where, I thought, oh, I don't have to bring anything with me because they'll always have water at a meetup, right? All they had was beer. And it's like, well, okay, this may end badly, but it's got to start great. So what is reactive? That's something that is frequently misunderstood. We talk about it a lot. We don't really get to the bottom of it. This is kind of a all-in-one statement that Rawson threw out. He's on Project Reactor within Pivotal. In a nutshell, reactive programming is about non-blocking, event-driven applications that scale with a small number of threads with back pressure as a key ingredient that aims to ensure producers do not overwhelm consumers. So there are several points in there that kind of tie into why reactive in the first place. But a few of the keys are non-blocking. It's event-driven, so you don't sit around waiting for a response. You don't just stop the world and wait for a response back from a request. You have a small number of threads, so you're being very efficient with your threads and resources. And you have back pressure so that you don't just jam everything down the pipe and overwhelm your consumers. So hopefully I'll be able to show you some of that as I go throughout. But again, we have this much time here, and we have unlimited time afterwards. So if I don't cover something or don't cover it to your satisfaction, maybe I didn't cover it to my satisfaction either, just ping me. It's all good. Tweet or email. So within the Project Reactor landscape within Spring, I guess a little bit of history lesson first. Reactive extensions, RX, originated at Microsoft with Eric Meyer, and they were implemented in different languages. Frankly, Java didn't have a solid implementation until Netflix kind of took the lead with RX Java. And that's been really good. Now RX Java is up to version 2, version 1 still supported. Version 2 had some interesting things like back pressure. But at some point, some folks within the industry said, we really need to have a spec that everybody can kind of write to and thus interoperate. Wouldn't that be a crazy idea, right? So folks from Akka, or not Akka, Lightbend, used to be TypeSafe, started when they were still TypeSafe, so it's hard to keep track of the name gumbo, but Lightbend and us and Netflix and I think even Oracle and some others are involved in trying to put forward the reactive stream spec. Java 9 will have a reactive implementation, reactive streams implementation. So what is the reactive stream spec? Well, if you go, of course, there always has to be a manifesto, right? So there is a reactive streams manifesto. Basically, it kind of summarizes in the purpose of the reactive streams is to provide a standard for asynchronous stream processing with non-blocking back pressure. Same thing. The API consists of the following components that are required to be provided by any implementer of reactive streams. You have a publisher, you have interfaces that you have to implement. One is as a publisher, one is as a subscriber, one is a subscription, and then one is a processor, which incorporates the interfaces for both publisher and subscriber. So you have these different implementations, Akka Streams, you have Project Reactor within the Pivotal space, within Spring. And then you have other implementations, I'm sure, that will be brought online, as well as the Java 9, Java util concurrent flow. So within the Spring ecosystem, you have Project Reactor Core, which influences other things. So you have Spring 5, which will be GA second quarter this year, July-ish. And that will have implemented alongside the current mechanisms, a reactive approach as well. And the reason I like to specify this as alongside is because there are different ways of approaching problems. And sometimes people say, why should I even entertain reactive? And my first answer back is if what you are using is working for you and working well, you may not need to. Reactive is another tool in your tool belt. It doesn't mean it's the golden hammer that's going to drive every nail perfectly. And that's something that I think in our industry is very easy to promote. When there's a new shiny technology, we want to rip and replace and just put in all new. And there are times, that a vendor will embrace that approach because it makes a lot of sense for them to do so. But does it make sense for you to do so? And one of the things that I'm excited about personally, because I'm not on the Reactor team, I'm a developer advocate, but one thing that I am excited about is that you don't have to throw away your years of hard-won knowledge with Spring. I guess let me ask, who's a Spring developer here? Okay, Java? Okay, so anybody not Java? Why are you here? I'm just kidding. No, it's okay. I'm an out-of-towner too. So, no. Anyway, so I feel like that and I'll kind of brag a little on the pivotal approach at this point, I feel like we're doing the right thing because we're trying to implement in a way that you can bring your knowledge with you from what you've done for years. You've gained a lot of experience, and that transfers very easily to the reactive space if you employ certain mechanisms. Now, we also go full functional reactive. If you're coming from a Scala or an Akka environment, that's fine. You won't feel ill at ease. But I think more of us are coming from a typical imperative approach, and to kind of rip the rug out from under you is a pretty rough thing to swallow, as well as expecting you to be productive and port stuff and migrate. It's just tough. So we want to make this easy for you to consume in a way that lets you fully leverage that and not give up on what you thought for years to build. So to kind of go into this a little bit more, just a quick summary of Project Reactor. You have Reactive Core. Reactive Core, again, as it says, fully non-blocking foundation. There are two different types that you will find typically used within Reactor, which is mono and flux. A mono is a type that will return either 0 or 1 value. A flux can return any number of values. And of course, it's effectively a stream. You're going to get them when they hit the pipeline. So those are the two that you have to work with within Project Reactor. Obviously, within your different implementations, they're called different things. RX typically calls them like observable, and I'm trying to think what the other one is for the singleton. I can't think of it right now. Maybe it is just still observable. It's been a while. But the key, of course, is non-blocking interprocess communication. So here is kind of the eye chart looking at the components. We're going to focus in on these three primarily. We're going to look at Reactor Core and Reactor Test and then Reactor Netty. Netty, we don't require you to use Netty. We also will support Servlet, 3.2, which allows asynchronicity within, as well as Chetty, I believe, when that finally comes online. So I mean, we're bringing in different options again to suit you. Undertow obviously is in there as well. So right now this is pre-GA. This is early access. So things are still a little bit fluid, although they're fairly stable. And of course, you're looking at, like I said, Q2 for Spring 5, and then end of year for Spring Boot 2.0, which will allow you to consume that, again, even more easily yet. So I guess I should have asked, who here is using Spring Boot? Okay, a few fewer hands. I'll kind of give you a very quick spin up on that as well, because that's kind of important to this. But right now it's showtime. So does anyone recognize this guy? Please tell me yes. Okay. Okay, thank goodness. I always worry a little when people don't recognize the doctor. So, okay, let's pop out of this and we'll go back to mirroring. And we're mirrored. That's good. Okay, so let's blow this up a little bit. Oh, that's much better. Okay. With the Spring Framework, a little bit of history. Spring Framework came into being because Enterprise Java in its early days was a train wreck, and it was not easily developed or consumed or deployed. At some point, Rod Johnson, among other people, said there has to be a better way, and Rod created what became known as, eventually, the Spring Framework. Yes? Oh, okay, I thought you... Over time, of course, the Spring Framework encompasses more and more functionality, more and more capability. And of course, it gets to be a bit more cumbersome to use the more capabilities it has. In 2013, Spring Boot went general availability, went GA. And Spring Boot allows you to very easily consume all the capabilities within the Spring Framework and deploy it pretty much anywhere there's a JVM, because it builds an Uber jar. And I don't want to go into the mechanics of this, but it's not a shaded jar, it's actually nested jars. And it allows you to do some things that, and eliminate some issues with shaded jars, like conflicts that you would see or potentially could see that you don't see in a Spring Boot jar. It also brings in things like auto configuration and sets up your structures of nested bombs, if you will. So it cleans up your dependencies quite a bit. But I don't want to focus on all of that as much. I just tell you that to kind of enable a little bit of background understanding. This is the Spring initializer that I'm showing now. You may know it by its URL, start.spring.io. This is where your journey into Spring Boot-based microservices starts. Spring Boot projects of any kind. And I'll give you a really quick tour of that, and then we'll dive in. So with the Spring initializer, it takes an opinionated approach to developing projects. And you often hear Spring talk saying, you know, opinionated. What does that mean? That always kind of bothered me. An opinionated approach means that if you fall within that 80 to 90% use case, we want to help you do something very quickly and easily with minimal coding. If you fall outside of that, in that 10 or 20% range, we still want to allow you to do it. We just want to make it easy for you to do, kind of get out of your way. So it's not quite as easy. You're going to have to probably provide a little more code, but you can certainly get there from here very quickly and easily. In the old days of a framework, it was one way. It was a framework way. And if you didn't do it that way, tough. But with Spring Boot, we take the opinionated approach too, but you have options. So as you can see, there's not a lot of options showing here. That's the simple version. If we switch to the full version, we see kind of more of the options that you can choose, but you don't have to. So you can choose, for instance, packaging. If you're still using an application server, you can use a WAR. You can deploy as a WAR file. But again, you don't have to. You can use a jar file. And that's what we recommend. Is anyone familiar with 12-factor applications? So good cloud-native citizens. You know, these are the 12 factors that Heroku app engineers stated were essential for being a good cloud-native citizen for your application. I kind of point to a couple of those as first among many. One is to bring your toys with you, which is bundle your dependencies. So if you require external dependencies and something breaks, your app's broken. Your users don't care that it's because of a connection pool issue. They just know your app is broken. So if you bundle your dependencies, which a fat jar, an Uber jar like Spring Boot provides, gives you, that takes care of that one. The other is externalizing your configuration. And I don't really talk about this in this talk, but happy to go into it at length offline. So we'll stick with the jar. You can also choose your Java version, anywhere from 1.6 to 1.8, but we hope you're using 1.8. If not, we hope you'll get there soon, because 9 is on its way. And 8 gives us a lot of goodies. Actually, the new version of Spring Framework at 5 is the first one to cut off version 6 of Java. And we've supported some really old technologies as underpinnings, but with Spring 5, we're going straight with a Java 8 and up approach. And of course, you don't even have to use Java. You can use Groovy or Kotlin, but who wouldn't want to use Java, right? So we'll just skip that part. And here are some dependencies you can choose. Your list of dependencies that are already battle tested with the version of Spring Boot that you're using. Now, I've got, for instance, in this case, 1.5.2 selected. So these are the dependencies that you can bring in that are tested with version 1.5.2 of Spring Boot. And it version synchronizes. So you don't have to play that version whack-a-mole that you've probably played on several wonderful occasions where you lose hours or days trying to figure out why your app won't build or run. You know, sometimes it's more insidious. Only to find out that version 3 of Library A doesn't work with version 7 of Library B, and you have to roll back Library B to version 5 and everything works. So you can choose these knowing that they've been tested, but it's opinionated. You can also bring your own. You can also override your versions, what have you. So anyway, I always go back to the simple version because it's simple, it's clean, and it works. So you can also, I guess I should point this out, if you're a Maven developer, you can choose to create a Maven project. If you're a hipster, you can create a Gradle project. So it's up to you. I always recommend Maven, but I'm not a hipster, so there you go. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to create a Maven project. I'm going to, and of course you can choose the current version of Spring Boot, a couple back, a couple snapshots on either side, and then of course the absolute latest, greatest bleeding edge beta, which is 2.0, and that's where the reactive goodies are. So that's where we're going today. I'm going to create an artifact. I'll call it, and we need, with any demo, you have to have some kind of a great demo environment, right? You have to have a great story. And Josh Long and I, does anybody know Josh? He's my buddy and teammate, and he and I worked on this, and we thought, what could be cooler? Okay, brace yourselves, because this is geek humor, so that means it's really probably not very cool, but whatever. What could be cooler than having a movie streaming service that only streamed reactive-based or reactive-associated movies? I mean, who needs Netflix when you have quality viewing like that, right? Okay, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. So what we thought is we'd create something called the Fluxflix service, like Netflix, Fluxflix. I'm typing at an angle here, so this. Normally I'm a pretty zippy typer, but if I start doing this, you'll know why, because I'm getting frustrated with missing keys. But and by the way, I will say this: occasionally I will throw in typos intentionally just to see if you're paying attention. So if I have a problem building, it's on you, okay? So stay with me. Just kidding. I actually do throw in typos, but I can assure you it's completely unintentional. Okay, so we're going to create a FlexFlix service because you all got really excited about that, and I don't want to disappoint. And then I'm going to bring in some dependencies like Reactive Web. And as it says, this allows you to do some reactive web development using Netty and Spring Web Flux. Don't blame me, I didn't ask for the name. I strenuously campaigned against the name. But like many things that people strenuously campaign against, I lost. So there we go. It is Reactive Web, or Web Flux. So we're going to bring in the dependency for Reactive Web, also Reactive MongoDB. I like MongoDB because it loses data faster than anything does. Okay, that's not true. Mongo is actually one of the first databases out of the gate with a reactive driver. So kudos to them. It makes it really easy for us to show all the way down the pipe. Because it's a frustrating thing indeed to create a reactive program and then block on your database access. It gains you nothing. So we want to have a fully reactive pipeline all the way down to the metal, right? That's what we're going to get. Also, I'm going to pull in Lombok because I'm a lazy developer. Lazy developers are smart developers. And I have a love-hate relationship with Lombok. I'll just admit that right now. I loved it. I hated it. I'm back loving it again. So that's what you're going to see. So I'm going to now create the project. And I'm going to put this, actually, let's put it on the desktop. That's clean. What this does, the Spring Initializer does, is it will, based upon your dependencies you specified, it will create your POM or your Gradle build file. It'll create your main application class, and that's it. It kind of zips up your tree structure, throws them into a zip file. You can download it, you can unzip it. Let's see. In fact, I probably should get started with that. And then you can take it from there and do your own code. But it gives you that kind of jump start. So let's go to the desktop. Let's open that. And we'll open that up in IntelliJ.
You're not using NetBeans?
I'll open that up in IntelliJ. No. So, just kidding. So I don't want to start a holy war here, a religious war of any kind. Spring does support NetBeans, Eclipse, STS, IntelliJ, pretty much anything. I mean, you can use Vim, probably not Emacs because that's horrible, but it supports anything. I just am used to working with IntelliJ more of late, so that's kind of what I go with. By the way, that's not really readable, so let's fix that. I forgot to change this beforehand. So font, and we'll go to, let's go with bigger and see if that works. Okay, so let's go, I guess let's open our POM first and see if that's readable. Is that readable, or do I need to get one larger? Good? Okay, we'll stay with that. Good, because when it goes one larger, it's like I get 3 words on screen, and that's like one class name in Spring. So anyway, just kidding. Okay. All right, so why is this not showing up? That's interesting. So I'm not sure NetBeans would work here. Let's see. I'm not so sure. Yeah, okay. All right, well, here we go. All right, so it's giving me some static here. I will click that, create default context, and we'll just move on. I had a project open there before, so it's kind of pulling in the dregs of that. Okay, so we don't really need to do anything to our build file, our POM. So what I'm going to do is go straight to our main application class, and then I'll start off here. Now, where are we going to start with our reactive story? I like to start at the bottom and go up from there, build up. So the first thing I'm going to do is create, I'm already squatting down here. Is this going to be good for my thighs and calf muscles? That's great. So I'm going to create a document for a Mongo, and I'm going to use Lombok. So I'm going to define a domain class here. I'm also going to have Lombok create me a no-args constructor as well as an all-args constructor, again, lazy coding. And I'm going to call this class movie, because again, this is FlixFlux, right? We're going to be streaming movies, or pretending we're streaming movies. I'm going to create an ID field or a member variable it associates with, and we'll call this ID, cleverly enough. And then I'm going to also create string. For a movie, you want the movie title and genre. And of course, since I know where I'm going with this, I actually know that I'm going to want to create another constructor which takes title and genre. And this is going to drive me a little crazy here. You know what? Can I, let's see, if I sit down, can I type on this still? I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to pull the stand, and we'll see what we get, because I feel like I'm already hitting more keys wrong than not, and I'm not even drinking, so this is... This may work. Okay, we'll give this a try for a while. What's that? Oh, yeah, okay. All right. All right, so here we go. So we have our first domain class defined. Let's also create another. I'm going to, again, use Lombok. Not going to be storing this. No args constructor and all args constructor. And we'll call this class movie event. Movie event. Now, when we're streaming a movie, we want to go a little bit further than Netflix. We want to add a social component to this, because everything's social nowadays, right? So we want to be able to see who else is streaming this movie with us, the same movie at the same time. That adds to our fun. That, of course, is assuming they go through the privacy options and select that as an option, because we're not Google. We want certain fields in our movie event. So something like, let's see, private string user, private movie, because we have to track which movie this is, right? Movie, private, date, when. So let's see, yep, we'll take that. Okay, now that gives us our domain model, if you will. Now let's go and create an interface. We'll call this our movie repository, and we'll extend our reactive Mongo repository, which will store and retrieve objects of type movie with IDs of type long. The reactive Mongo repository is an interface as defined in Spring Data. If you're familiar with CRUD repository or JPA repository in Spring Data, it operates exactly the same. If you're not, get familiar with them, because it's a really great tool to help you avoid having to write a lot of boilerplate code. We do want, that gives us a lot of capabilities just kind of out of the box with no code, because by defining this interface, Spring Boot is smart enough to create a proxy bean to act and interact with your data store on your behalf. It gives you the ability to retrieve all, to find one by ID, to save, to delete, things like that. But if you want to go outside of those areas, then you need to provide a little bit of code yourself, right? I think we're going to want to be able to pull up a mono of type movie. And again, this isn't just the movie itself. This is a reactive type, a mono of type movie. So it'll either return a movie or not, but that's it, 0 or 1. And we'll say this is find by title, because we'll want to be able to search on movies by title. And we'll pass in a string as title. And then we'll also probably want to be able to return a flux. Yeah, see, I'm still not at the right angle here. Flux of type movie. I think I might have found the right combination now. Look at that. All right, so flux of type movie, find by genre, because we'll want to be able to search on different genres, again, so we can find movies that are of the same genre that we're currently watching. So that should get us what we need from our interface. And that's great. That'll handle our storage, but right now we don't have anything in there. And I am kind of OCD. I like to see what's going in and what's in my repository. Oh, and I did forget one other thing. Sometimes I forget this. I probably need to pay homage to the Mongo god. So we'll call on the Mongod, and we're off and running. Because it doesn't really work really well storing in Mongo when Mongo is not listening. So, all right. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a bean that will implement the command line runner interface. And the command line runner interface is within Spring Boot. It's a functional interface. Who here is using Java 8? Familiar with functional interfaces? There's a single abstract method in command line runner called run. We're going to provide the Lambda implementation for that. I'm going to call this demo data, and I'm going to inject our movie repository so I can get to there from here. Return strings, and this is our Lambda implementation. So now I'm going to first, before I get started, because we're going to be doing some restarts as we go, and I don't want to keep adding the same records over and over again. So I'll do a delete all in block just to get things started. And then what I want to do is create some movies. And this is where the fun begins, right? Yeah, fun. I realize my bar is pretty low. So I'm going to create a stream of movie titles here. Things like Flux Gordon. or meet the Fluxers, or Eon Flux. Feel free to jump in, anyone. Come on. This is great stuff. My wife tells me I'm only funny when I'm not trying to be. And I'm trying to be, so that's why nobody's laughing. But I do take pity laughs, by the way, so if anybody wants to. But give me some titles here. Something like maybe... Oh, God, that is great. All right, I like that. Back to the Fluxer. Yeah, we'll go with that. The Fluxinator. Anybody else? Honey, I shrunk the flux. Flux, okay. What? Inflection. Let's see, fluxion. Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, so we'll stop there. But that's an excellent list of titles, right? Who would not want to subscribe to this service? So we're off and running. So we're going to take that stream, and we're going to map that stream of titles to a new movie. And we're going to take that title, and we need to provide a genre. I'm going to create a method for creating a random genre, so we can supply a genre. And let's see, where am I? Dot for each, and we'll do a, let's see, actually, let me clean this up a little bit. I kind of get excited and I stop, and I don't keep things as neat as they should be. So for each, and we'll take that movie, and we'll do a movie repository dot save movie, and then we will, let's see, for each, and then we'll do a subscribe there. That way we can see what we're doing, because again, I like to see what I'm doing. Print line. Okay, now we just need to create our random genre method. So we'll do a private string random genre, typing counts, and let's create an array of strings. We'll call it, cleverly enough, genres. And let's see, comedy, rom-com, drama, documentary. Any others? Family, action. All right. Horror. So bad you have 3 R's. All right. Well, that'll start us. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. User group prezos. All right. And we'll split that based on comma space, and then we'll return genres. Let's see, which one? We'll do a new random dot nextint bounded by the length of the genres. Okay, so that should get us up and running. Am I missing anything? Front row, you're on the hook. Well, okay, first few rows, you're on the hook, because I only have 2 of you here on the front. I don't want to put anybody in the spot. Okay. Okay, so we see that we have some movies in there, and we got some really good, we're mixing it up. Mongo has obligingly given us some IDs. Let me zoom back out and just come down a little bit so we get them all. So Flux Gordon is a rom-com. I always kind of like to see what where they go with this. Inflection is a horror movie. I'm not sure the other ones are really that far off. That's kind of disappointing. Usually you get some really good ones, like some rom-coms listed as horror or something, which is, okay, I find that amusing, but maybe not. Okay, so we know it's working. And so at this point, we've established, kind of that bottom tier of effort, that bottom tier working, and it's all going reactively. We're passing monos and we're passing fluxes, and we feel really good about ourselves. So let's see if we can break it. And by the way, since all this is fairly new, this may break, just so you know. If it does, I always try to console myself with the knowledge that things that break are instructive too. So hopefully that won't happen, but if it does, then we'll go with it. So the next thing we need to do is create a service for our modules to deal with, to interact with, on behalf of our FluxFlix service. So we'll call this, again, cleverly enough, FluxFlix service. I'm as good at naming as I am at humor. So the first thing I'll do is inject our movie repository, and we'll do that with constructor injection because that's better for testing. And then let's define our API. So for instance, we'll return let's start with returning a flux of type movie, and we'll call this get all movies. Okay, and we'll return this movie repository find all. Simple, right? And what else do we want? Well, maybe a mono of type movie. and we'll call it get movie by ID. And we'll pass a string ID. Okay, so return this dot movie repository dot find one ID. Oop. Ooh, what happened there? Okay, stay on it, front row. Tell me if I'm going off the tracks here. Okay, so now we'll probably want to return a mono of type movie. Let's see, so get movie by title, because we already defined that we would want to be able to do that in our interface for our movie repository itself. So we'll pass a title. Return this dot movie repository dot find by title. We'll pass that, and that's cool. And then we'll probably want to return a flux of type movie. Let's see, get related movies, and we'll pass in the genre. Ha, always looks like it's sticking his tongue out there. Return this dot movie repository dot find by genre. Oops, you know what? Let's change this up a little bit. Let's pass in our movie that we want to match, and that way we can just do this. We'll get genre. That adds a little mystery to things, right? Maybe not. Okay. Well, anyway, the next thing we want to do is, again, this has a social element. So we want to be able to stream our movie events of when people start streaming the same movie that we're watching. We want to see that. Hey, look, Jason's recognizing my excellent taste in movies. He's joined me in watching this. That's great. Or, wow, I can't believe he listened to my horrible recommendation. What a sucker. Whatever. But at this point, we would typically access something that's in memory, right? Storing whatever people are watching, or when they come online and start watching, or maybe even hit the data store and say, hey, who's watching what? We don't have that because we're not live yet. We're not even to the MVBP stage, the minimum barely viable product. Yeah, so we're not there yet. So what I'm going to do is just generate it. I'm going to generate some movie events, and we'll call this get movie events for a particular movie. Come on, fingers. I'm slouching again. That's the problem. Here we go. Okay. So how do we do this? Well, it's not really that hard. What we'll do is we'll take our movie repository, and we'll find one. And we'll take our movie and get the ID from that, and then we will flat map that. We'll take what we get back from that, find one, our mono of type movie, and we'll flat map that. Whoops, let's see. Actually, I don't even need to do that because I can just do this. Movie repository dot, let's see, find by genre, movie dot get genre. That should work, right? It looks unhappy, so let's see. Oh. So I'm getting a movie, I'm passing it, actually.
What's it about?
Flat map. So I'm taking the movie. Oh boy, it's been a long day already. So I'm passing the movie to the flat map. Work with me here. You get one, you return multiples. So what I'm going to, let's see, this dot movie repository dot find by genre, movie dot genre, get genre. And that should be fine. And yet it's not happy at all. So what am I missing?
What's the error say?
Make, return, reactor. Oh gosh. Well, that would, yeah, that would be something, wouldn't it? Oh gosh. Well, I'm skipping ahead in the demonstration. This is what happens when I don't get enough sleep. So what we're going to do is create some movie events. What I want to do at this point is generate a list of these events. I'm going to create a flux of type movie event. And we'll call this cleverly enough event flux, and we'll do a flux.fromStream, and I'm going to generate a stream of new movie events. And let's see, we want to provide a little bit of variety here. So, Jason, let's start with that. We'll do a math.random. If math.random is greater than 0.5, we'll say Jason is watching this movie. JSON. And I'm actually going to drop this down so it's not quite so hard to read. And if it's less than 0.5, what's your name, sir? Brian. B-R-I-A-N or Y? I. Okay. Excellent. Very traditional. I keep hitting the wrong button. Brian. See, I am slouching too much. Now, cap. All right. This has got to change. Hold on. Just at the wrong height. Okay. So we're passing in our user for our movie. The next thing for our movie event, rather, the next thing we want to do is pass in our movie itself, and then we'll pass in or create a new date. So that gives us our movie event flux. The next thing we'll do, though, is create a flux of type long, and we'll call this our interval flux. At this point, we'll create a flux.interval using a duration of seconds 1. Now, what does this do? A flux, our interval flux is just a pulse. So it creates a new long value every second. It just increments and pulses. Every second it produces a new value and throws it down the pipeline for our interval flux. What I'm going to do now is return flux.zip event flux and interval flux. And then I will map that to tuple2 get T1. Come on, there we go. Now, this is a little bit of oddness, but bear with me. What I'm doing is creating a movie event flux, which just it generates and throws as many movie events down the pipeline as it possibly can at the highest rate of speed it can. The interval flux creates a new long value once every second. So it's just a pulse. And then a zip, all it does is like your zipper on your hoodie. It just zips one value of each at the same time. So it gates it. It slows it down to 1 per second. And then what I do is pull the first tuple out of that, the event flux, the value that's going into the event flux out of that, and sends it down the pipeline once per second. So it's a nice way of creating that little beeper, that sends a movie event out every second. So that should work, but wouldn't it be really cool if we could test it? Gosh, how do we test things? It'd be really nice if we could create a test or something. So let's create a test. I always kind of hate to pull that up because as soon as I say the word test, half the room falls asleep. But just stay with me, please. This will be exciting. This will be exciting. That we're going to time travel. Not everybody can time travel and test, right? So you didn't believe me? Okay. Anyway, I'm going to pull in an instance, a FluxFlix service bean for my testing. And I'm going to do a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do is just have a random movie pulled out of our repository. So this, actually I'll just shorten it, FluxFlix service dot get all movies dot block first. Right now we have no way of asking Mongo for a random record, a random movie. So what we do is just say, give me everything. It comes back in a random order, and we just block till we get the first one and then shut down. So we'll grab a random movie, if you will. And here's where the time travel comes in. Because again, when you're talking about a blocking type of test, you may be expecting 5 values to come down the pipeline, or 10, or 30, or 3,000. But when you issue your request, you're going to get values back. And you wait, you get them, and you move on. And for testing, that actually works quite well. What if you're testing a flux that you don't know when the values will come down the pipeline? So you may have to test something for 10 hours or 10 days, and that's really a drag. That, especially if it fails like 97% of the way through it. So we want to be able to somehow time travel, to step through time. With Project Reactor, we introduced a thing called Step Verifier with virtual time. It's so nice because now you don't have to wait. You can get up and running, and you can warp time yourself. So I'm going to, this dot FluxFlix service dot, let's see, actually, get related movies, no, get movie events for our movie, right? And then I'm going to take 10 of those, just for instance, and I'm going to collect those using collectors.toList. So we know we're going to get a list out of this, right? And we'll take that list and we will then await. I can't even type today. Boy, this is not going well. Okay, so with virtual time dot then await, yes. And we need to await a certain duration of time. I'll say 10 minutes. We know we're going to, well, sure, 100 minutes, doesn't matter. It's virtual time, right? So we know we're going to get a value, or we expect to get a value once every second. We're going to wait 100 minutes. And all this is virtual time, so it doesn't really matter. It's just funny time. But we're going to make sure we get those 10 values we need. And then we will consume next with. So we know we're going to get a list out of this because we collected those 10 values in a list. So we'll take that list and we'll put it in another list. Just kidding. And we will, let's see, so we'll assert true. And there are many ways to get there from here, but I'm going to do it this way because I like how it cleans up. And then we'll verify complete. Okay, so this should work, right? In theory? Let's find out if it works in fact. I keep hitting my wrong keys. Oh man, let's see, what do I have here? Okay, flux from stream. Well, that would make sense. Stream.generate. I just blithely skipped over that part. So we will generate. Yes, seems happier. Okay, so, and let's start that. Come on, that works better. I lost my cushion here. What's that? Do we even still have phone books nowadays? All right, so let me see what I've got wrong here. So stream generate, and we've got our flux stream generate. Let's see. Well, what am I missing? Front row, help me out. Oh, no, I just been looking at the test. Holy cow. Well, we're good, actually. Our test passed. Yeah, that's so unusual. I'm not used to seeing green. What's going on here? Okay, so we'll go back to, I'm kidding. All my tests passed. All right, let's make it not pass so I can tell you that's not the case here. So the next thing I'm going to do is just rerun this. Yes? Oh, yeah, please. Oh, now I'm back. This should work. Okay, so this failed. This is what we expected to happen, so this failed. All right, so I just wanted to show you that so you wouldn't think that I was like, can test ahead of time, somehow behind the scenes manipulating the results, playing with the ballots. Okay, so we're good. So that's fine. We know we're tested up and running with our service, and we know our service works. So this makes us happy, right? So now, let me go back down here, close tab. So now we have a clean slate. Now we've created our interface for our various other modules to access. But what about when we want to go out of band, right? What about for the processes that aren't in this application? It would be really cool to develop something like a REST API, right? So we're going to create a REST controller. I'm going to map this. Oops, helps when you finish typing. Request mapping. We'll call it /movies. And I'll call this class movie controller. And what kind of an interface do we want to provide? Well, first I want to inject private final flux service. And then we'll, come on. Private final flux service. There we go. That's much happier. Okay, so what kind of an API do we want to define? Well, let's start with a get mapping. And we're going to want to return, again, let's say via browser or reactive web client, all movies. So public, flux, movie, all. Return this dot flux service dot get all movies. Okay, easy peasy. And then let's do a get mapping for to allow searching by ID. And we will do a public mono of type movie. Let's see, find, let's see, get by ID. And we will bring in a path variable, which is a string, the ID. Then we'll return this dot fluxflix service dot get movie by ID, ID. And then perhaps we want to take a peek at our movie events, right? That's where it starts to get fun. I'm going to provide a little bit of additional information here. Oops. Come on, front row, you're laying me down here. There we go. All right, so slash ID and slash. You're killing me, Smalls. Does anybody recognize that? Oh, wow. Oh, thank goodness. Wow. Delayed reaction almost had me crying and packing my stuff. Okay, so Sandlot. Really? The rest of you? That's a great movie. Okay, all right. So I'm going to return a flux of type movie event. And we'll say get, let's just say all movie. Yeah, we'll just say movie events. How's that? Because I really like naming stuff. And again, we're going to expect a path variable of ID, string ID. So return this dot fluxflix service dot get movies by ID. And then I will flat map that to this dot fluxflix service dot get movie events, right? For, oops, let's see. Actually, that's the cool thing. I can use a method reference here. Yay. Okay. So in theory, at least, that should work. Assuming I have no typos, which no promises here, but you know, let's find out. So let's run this. Okay. Oh, nope. Is it running? It's gonna work? It's gonna work. Okay. Yay, I shouldn't be that excited about that, should I? Okay. Kind of ruins the hype. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is pull up a list of all movies, and then I'm going to make it readable. So we have our list of excellent movie titles that anybody would pay good money to see, and we're getting that back by way of a flux of type movie. Now I'm going to pull, doesn't matter, Honey, I Shrunk the Flux. We're going to pull that ID, and then I'm going to add it in as our ID and make sure that that endpoint works as well. And of course it does, because you know eventually it all does work, right? And now let's take a look at the movie events and see who's watching. Did I click? Oh. Well, and here's what happens again when you're on too little sleep. You forget key elements. Because remember I said I was going to provide a little extra value here. No pun intended. I also need to produce something that a browser will recognize as being an open connection. Because what typically happens is a request response, right? And if you don't tell it somehow that you're going to be feeding it a stream of values, it just expects, you know, it gets the original flux coming back with no value and it just sits there. It looks stupid. So what I'm going to do is pass it a media type of text event stream value, which gets a server sent event stream going very nicely. WebSocket is also supported, but for our purposes, SSE works a treat. So that's what we're going to do. Let me restart this. Yes, of course. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Kill. And then let's try that. Yes, okay, we're up and running. Let's go back to where we started. Local host, movies. We'll pull Meet the Fluxers in. I always heavy hand that. Boom. Okay. Boom / events. And now we have a stream of events coming in, and that's actually too big. Now we've got a nice stream. Okay. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, now that works for the browser. You know, if you're doing SSE, that's fine. But what if we want a fully reactive web client too? And that's where we're going to go next. How much time do I have? Am I good? Oh, not bad.
Sure. We started at what?
Okay. Well, I will make this. I'll make this fast, just so we don't like. You know, people have to leave and stuff. If you do have to leave, I understand. I mean, I know this is midday, so, but hopefully you won't. So, all right. So we're going to create a FluxFlix client. I'm going to remove the MongoDB dependency because, again, that's why we have our service. It needs Mongo. Our client certainly doesn't. And I'm going to generate the project, save it down, and we'll go to the desktop. We'll open it, And come on, IntelliJ, you can do this. It's just not happy because I've had another project open there by the same name in the past, and it's just giving me grief. So we'll reopen this and let IntelliJ clear its little mind. Clear its mind. All right, create default context. Yep, it's fine. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, and this is kind of a shortcut, I always try to tell people when I'm doing the proper way of doing things versus a kind of a quick and dirty shortcut, so you don't go back and say, well, Mark said this was okay, so it must be all right. Because we're bringing in Spring Web Flux here, the reactive web interface, which also brings in Netty. Now, we don't need Netty for our reactive web client, but of course, it'll start it up and it'll have a port conflict unless you either exclude it, which takes a couple minutes, or you just assign it a different port. So being as how that's expedient, that's what I'm going to be doing here. So don't normally do that, okay? So the first thing we'll do is create our domain model again using Lombok, no arg constructor, all args constructor, class, movie, private, string ID, title, and genre. And then, of course, we need to, as well, create our no args constructor, all args constructor, class, movie event. And, of course, we have a private string user because we want to track our user. Shouldn't say that. We want to make note of our user. We don't track anybody. And then, of course, our date when it's being actually watched. So that gets us our domain. Now, what do we need to do? Well, first we need to create a bean for our web client. So we'll do that. Return web client.create. And you don't have to provide anything here, but I like to provide my base URL that everything builds off of, the endpoint root. So I'm going to do that here. It adds a little bit of work down the road, but I think it's actually much cleaner and, don't repeat yourself and all that. So we're hitting 8080 movies, and we'll start from there. The next thing I want to do is create another command line runner bean. Another bean that implements command line runner interface, because that way it gives me a chance to just demo things very easily, quickly. And again, I know we're tight on time. Oh, come on. Sigh. Web client. Okay, typing too fast in a weird position. Okay, so return strings. This gets us our Lambda that we're going to provide for our implementation for run. And the first thing I'm going to do is, do a client.get.URI, and I'm going to take the URI builder and do a path, which again, I'm not adding on anything now in the initial call because I'm just hitting the movie's endpoint. So I'm just do an empty string and a build, and then I'll take that URI and I'll exchange, and I will flat map the results coming back from that. So as you can see, it sends me back a client response, and I'm going to take that client response and map that to a flux of type movie. From there, I'm going to filter the movies so that I only get the movie, which movie you want? Any favorites? Oh, you said something? Flux Gordon. Okay, Flux Gordon. Okay, so we're gonna get that one in particular, and then I'm going to subscribe. So we should get that one movie, right? We're just going to do a call to all of our movies and grab one. Make sure that we grab the right one, of course. So now we have our movie, and I'm going to take that and do a client.get again .URI, and here we're going to go a little crazier. I'm going to get ahead of myself. I'm going to create my path, and I'm going to add on the ID/events, because we want to do something with the events, right? And I'm going to take that and build it, passing in the movie.getID. So that will build that URL using the movie's ID and substitute it into the path via URI builder. So let's see. There we go. And then I want to exchange again, of course, and then we will flat map that. So we're going to take that client response. I shorten that just because it's easier to read. client response.body to flux, and we're going to map it this time to our movie event class. Let's see, and then I want to subscribe to that, and then we'll just see what we get. And that should work, right? Unless I've missed something really egregious somewhere. Yeah, well, yeah, I was getting there. I was talking. All right, you are. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I don't have any free T-shirts to give, but maybe you'll get one from Oracle. So. Oh, that was funny. That was good humor, guys. Come on. All right, so let's run this and see if I got everything. It's always a plus when things work, right? Oh, it works. It works. Okay, so we have our movie events flowing in, fully reactive web client, fully reactive web service, and let's see, what else do we have to cover? I guess that's pretty much it. I do want to go back here really quickly. Let me shut this down because kind of the most important part. People always say, "Where's the code? Can I see the code?" Yes, absolutely, you can see the code. So, let me switch back to non-mirrored. And pop this up there. Boom, boom. Okay, so here's the money slide right here. The first one is the Reactive Streams website, so you can go check out the manifesto, check out the spec. With the spec, there's a TCK, so you can verify that your implementation, should you choose to write one yourself, actually works and is compliant. So is interoperable with all of the other implementations. I would say it's a lot of work. I don't contribute directly to this. It's a fairly new project, although we've had some folks working on it off and on and moving in and out of the project for the last couple of 3 years, but it's a very complex thing to do and do well. So I'd encourage you to pick an implementation and use it. But if you choose to write one, there's your starting point. Project Reactor is ours. That's the pivotal approach to things. And again, we can do the full functional reactive, but this allows you to ease into things and to mix and match. So you don't throw away the hard-won knowledge that you have with an imperative model with your current Spring Framework apps and your Spring Boot apps. And then, of course, down below, the last one is Josh's and my repo, which has the full code from this demo and other goodies as we decide to add them in. So, again, this is very new. We've just kind of gotten started on this path on showing it and talking about it, and it's a lot of fun. But it is a little bit of a switch, a little bit of a mind switch. So it's not the tool for everything, but it's a great tool for some things. So give it a shot. Try it. Kick the tires. If you find something that doesn't work the way you think it should, let us know. Maybe you're doing something wrong we can help you with. Maybe you're doing something right and we need to fix something. So by all means, feedback welcome. And then, of course, Twitter handle, which is the best way to reach me. So that's it. Thanks. I guess let me stop there. Thank you very much. And do you have any questions? Yes?
You mentioned at the beginning that part of the manifesto was that the producers will make sure that they would swarm the consumers. What mechanism do you have in place that you slow down the producers, you block the producers? How do you stop the clients from being
Excellent. And I gave you a little hint of that with the test case where I did a take 10, but I didn't really go in and explain that. So thank you for asking. The question was, how do you implement back pressure? How is that implemented within Project Reactor or within reactive streams in general? And the idea is that you can either just open the floodgates and say, give me this flux, or you can say, I want this flux, give me X values, in values. So you can say, give me 2, I can deal with 2. And then once you complete those, then you ask for 2 more or 10 more or whatever the rate of speed is that you can address. That allows you to, the illustration you sometimes see is like the dial on a guitar amp where you can turn up the volume or turn it down. That also means that, if your client is having trouble keeping up, you can adjust that as you go. So it's not something that you set and forget. You can actually adaptively tell your producer to slow down, I'm getting too much. So that's how you implement it, is typically with a take, and there's another method name that is sometimes commonly used, and it just escapes me at the moment.
So the producer has to implement a method to know slow down, or is it some action there?
It accepts the request with a parameter, so it knows that I'm going to send X number, and of course if it gets a request with no boundary, it just opens the floodgates. If it gets a request for 5 values, it sends 5 and then stops, and then waits for further instructions from that particular consumer.
It's controlling the next, your intervals are controlling
Yes, yes. Yeah, the intervals are controlled with the next. You're specifying as a consumer how many values you can take. So that allows you to keep that dial. It doesn't solve everything. Obviously, there's complexity built in there, but it's complexity that you're handling on the server side, which makes a lot more sense, is a lot more easily handled, if you will. Cool. Okay. Well, if that's it, by all means, again, if you think of something later, ping me. I'm more than happy to talk about this stuff at length. Twitter or mark@thehecklers.org. Email me is fine too, but yeah, the time's unlimited, and if you think of something that I haven't hit, I'll happily relay that. I'll tease it out myself. That's how we all learn, right? We share. And I've always felt like, nobody knows everything, but we all know something, and if we all share, we all get smarter faster. So yeah, throw it at me, and we'll all learn together. So thanks for having me.